Welcome to the Pretty Powerful Podcast, where powerful women are interviewed every week to share real inspiring stories and incredible insight to help women or anyone break the barriers, be a part of innovation, shatter the glass ceiling, and dominate to the top of their sport, industry, or life's mission. Join us as we celebrate exceptional women and step into our power. And now, here's your host, Angela Gennari.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Pretty Powerful Podcast. My name is Angela Gennari, and today I'm here with Aleya Harris. Hi, Aleya.
Hi, Angela.
So good to see you. So our guest today is a strategic storytelling consultant, award-winning speaker, and best-selling author of Spark the Stage. As CEO of the Evolution Collective, Aleya helps leaders unlock their radically authentic stories to transform cultures and drive success. So cool. So storytelling is one of those very unique skill sets that I think it's so powerful when you get it right. So what made you want to get into storytelling and then help others to do the same?
It was a little bit of an accident.
Uh-huh.
I was about to embark on a great storytelling journey as the head of marketing for North America for a big company that I was working for. And I had read a book called Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller, which I definitely recommend that everyone read. And I had convinced my boss to send me to Nashville for a week to get trained in the book, become certified as a story brand certified guide. And I was going to turn all of that juicy knowledge into marketing for the company. And then they laid me off 2 weeks after I did the training. And I said, okay, well, what do I have? What are my assets right now? What makes me valuable? And what do I want to do with that information? And I realized that I didn't really want to go back to working for somebody else. And I had this fancy certification that was 5 figures to attain that I didn't have to pay for. Yay for that. So what could I do for story? And I really realized that not only did I love it, but I was good at it. I was good at not only using the framework, but at understanding the message behind the framework and allowing people to tell their authentic stories through the framework. In fact, I was so kind of good at that I ended up working as a trainer for StoryBrand, as well as being in some of their online components, and then traveling around and training companies on their behalf. So story became a way for me to articulate my passion and my purpose, which is to love people into the highest versions of themselves. Story is a clarifying device. It's a way for you to understand your unmet potential. It's a way for you to understand the people around you. And all of that is a way for you to then love yourself into an even better version of yourself.
That's very cool. Very cool. So I like that you really kind of make it personal for people, and storytelling is that, because so many times I see people go out there and they try to tell a story, but until you get really authentic and until you're able to really be vulnerable in telling your story, I don't think it connects.
I 100% agree with you. So since my story brand journey, I've gone on to develop my own storytelling frameworks based off of some research of not only just the hero's journey, which is what the story brand framework is based on, but of other other story frameworks from Africa and Latin America, to also make sure that it wasn't just a colonialized version of storytelling that I was telling. And what I discovered in that experience was that stories are a way to unlock you on the inside and allow you to transmit that to somebody else. So if you miss the first step of figuring out yourself and what you want to unlock before you put it through story, the story falls flat. So you need to figure out your what I call radically authentic self, at least enough to have one good story to tell. And it doesn't have to be a story around some big trauma that you face or something horrible you've gone through, but it needs to be a story that you are deciding to share because it connects with some commonality within humanity, with fears that we all have, hopes that we all have, experiences that we all have. And the reason why you're telling your story is to allow people to see their own stories in new and exciting ways. Because when you are authentic and people understand where you're coming from through the power of story, you are then facilitating their transformation. That's the whole point of story.
I love that so much. And there's a lot in there, but I just keep thinking to myself, like, is it difficult to get people to be vulnerable and share some of that? Because I know, like, I'm a radically different person in my 40s than I was in my 20s. Because in my 20s, I felt like I couldn't be vulnerable. I was so like, I had to have this tough exterior. I was trying to build a business. I was trying to do all these things. And I wasn't able to get in touch with that vulnerable side because I was too afraid that if people saw the vulnerable side of me, then they would discount my abilities. And so,
Mm.
but it wasn't until I was in my 40s that I stepped into the comfort of that, of, just being authentically me, and people can take it or not, and that's okay. Like, I've gotten comfortable with that. But how difficult is it for you to get that vulnerability out of people?
I think it's not very difficult. So, but it's because of when they come to me. So I
Mm,
can tell when someone is not ready or that's not their jam
right.
and this is not the path for them. By the time I get them, they're at least we'll call them vulnerability curious.
Uh-huh.
They're wanting to explore more. They see how even large brands are getting more authentic and having great results because of it. They're seeing that vulnerability and the courage to be vulnerable will help them see parts of themselves that is they're actually the parts that are the differentiators.
Yeah.
That's what vulnerability does. Is most people look outside of themselves for how do I stand apart? What's the
Mm,
newest gadget? What's the newest technique? What's the newest phase or fad? And all of that soon becomes assimilated because none of it is really truly unique. As soon as you learn the newest technique, well, then somebody else is going to learn the newest technique too. And then now what? And now where did your
mhm.
differentiation go? So if you go inside yourself, you are already differentiated. You came into this world differentiated. You just need to be able to articulate what that is and tell that story so people connect with you. So, for
Mhm.
example, at the time of this recording, there's about roughly 800 story brand certified guides.
Okay.
If if when I started, all I was going to do was be like my differentiating point was a story brand certified guide. That's quite a bit of competition.
Hmm.
I mean, it's less than the number of marketers out there, but it's a highly specialized category, right?
Right.
And there's websites where you can find us all together, and you're just like, how do I know who to pick?
Hmm.
And so it took me a couple of years, but then I leaned into, well, I'm the story brand certified guide who is going to really lean into you and tell your authentic story. It's not just about putting the things in the boxes.
Yeah.
And ever since I've recently let go of my story brand certification because I have branched into my own frameworks. But it was that small bit of me tapping into what I was good at, which is in the grocery store, Angela. People start telling me their whole life stories because there's something about me that makes
Hmm.
you want to talk.
Right. Yeah, I love it.
And so I'm like, well, let me use that and get people talking about themselves so that they can make the impact they're supposed to make on the world.
Yeah. Well, that's beautiful. So where did this come from with you? Like how did you go from, you know, how are you able to tell your authentic story? How did you get there?
It's been an interesting ride. One, I've always been a talker. Like
Hmm.
I was a kid in elementary school that got in trouble for whispering because I didn't really know
Yes.
the concept. I was like,
Hmm.
how low is your voice supposed to be? But then nobody can hear me if I'm whispering.
Right.
What's the point? So I've
Mhm.
always been a communicator, but I think that it was in my own personal internal journey that I started getting into my authentic self. It took me leaving corporate because I was always a pretty connected human, but it really took me leaving corporate, took me leaving those rules and realizing what the rules were. And then I dove in. I went to seminars and many ayahuasca ceremonies, and I did a lot of the exercises and used the tools that I put inside of my book, Spark the Stage. The whole first third of the book is dedicated to tools to help you reach your authentic self, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there was a lot of crying and journaling and tarot cards and using pendulums and all of these things to do what is actually pretty simple is to sit down, quiet the world, quiet yourself enough, and start having conversations with that radically authentic self within you. The reason why many of us can't just do that is because there's so much noise. We can't concentrate. We doubt ourselves. Oh, that voice that we're hearing, that's just me. That's not any type of wisdom. I'm not wise. I'm not worthy. I'm not valuable. I'm not this. And so we do a lot of things to just be able to get to the point where we can do the most simple thing, which is to sit down and have a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to do it all, and everybody's journey is different. I mean, some people might just be able to sit down and have the conversation. They would save them years. So I wish I were that person. I was
Right.
not.
Right.
So once I was able to sit down and have that conversation, I started really seeing what my limiting beliefs are and where to move forward. And then a couple of years after that, I had a baby, and I love her. She's adorable. She's 2.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
Her name is Ruby Coral. She was my favorite person on the planet.
Mm.
But I was super cute while pregnant, had a great pregnancy. I only gained like 16 pounds. I was all
Wow.
belly, and I got a little booty with.
Uh-huh. Right.
So, hey, girl, hey. I was super excited about that. But then after I gave birth, I had a little bit of well, not a little bit, I had a traumatic birth experience. And then from there, I just had postpartum depression, and I'm still getting through it. I like this week, my psychiatrist adjusted my depression medication. So it's been a kind of dark night of the soul journey for me, which I realized was necessary for me to go on to dive deeper into myself and also to gain a stronger level of empathy for those who cannot see themselves. Because I've always had a grand sense of self-awareness, but in depression, it's like I didn't have awareness of anything besides that I was sad or anxious.
Mhm. Yeah.
Or just blocked or tired, because depression doesn't always manifest in crying all day sadness. It manifests in many different multitude of ways. um and I went through feeling blocked and was like, oh, this is horrible. Like that connection that I kind of took for granted felt like it was gone. I went through not understanding myself and being lost and being broke and not and like so all this stuff that I went through over a period of 2 years gave me a grander sense of empathy for people with where they are, and allowed me to be able to help them even more from a place of deeper understanding, because now I have gone through yet another cycle of my story. We keep going through stories and having triumphs and successes, and then we get another crisis and we go through, and we're constantly on a story cycle. But this story cycle is the hardest of my life. And going through that has helped me be able to tell that story, which I've told many times in more depth than this, and then also be able to hear people's stories from an even more empathetic, sympathetic, compassionate place.
Yeah. I can totally relate to that. So I had been writing a book for 20 years, and this book is just something, it was just kind of my own personal project. I wasn't sure what I was ever going to do with it. It was just keeping notes and keeping notes and keeping notes. And it was all about connection and overcoming obstacles. And I had my own journey, being raised by a single mom and growing up in a and not a troubled house, but just the whole school was a terrible school and just was not a great childhood. But at the same time, like, I had a really strong mother who was a great support system, and there were a lot of positives. So even though we didn't have money, we didn't, there were a lot of struggles, there was also the ability to have a really strong foundation. But, so I was writing this book since I probably was 20, right? And so over 20 years, I'm writing this book. And I stopped writing it at a time period of my life when I had gotten into a really horrible relationship with somebody who was a narcissist, was very abusive. And so it created this emptiness inside of me that I just felt like I didn't have anything to say or anything to give. And why would anyone listen to me?
Mhm.
Like,
Mhm.
what on earth would I give in value if I'm in this, right?
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
I shelved the book, and it just kind of went away for a long time. And it wasn't until I came out of that. And the whole time I was in this abusive relationship, I wasn't telling anyone that what was going on. Like, I was
Mm.
protective of that, where I didn't want people to judge me because I was weak, right? Like,
Mm.
I felt like, I'm just too weak. I can't share this with anyone. They'll think that I can't handle my life. I'm a terrible mother, or I'm a terrible person for being in this. And it was, but anyway, it was when I came out of it. And it took me about a year after I came out of it where I finally just started being vulnerable and telling people, like, well, what happened with this relationship? He seemed like such a great guy. And I was like, no,
Mm.
public. You only in public was he a great guy. And so I finally started telling people the honest truth about what was going on. And that was such a freeing moment, where I was like, I'm going to tell people about how I went through this horrible, awful thing for a few years. And, people really, it really resonated. And that vulnerability was my ability to finally connect and say, okay, you know what? Because I would always have this perfect facade. Like, I had to have this,
Mhm.
whatever I put out on the outside had to be perfect. And so I didn't want to tell anyone in the times that I was weak. I didn't want to share any of my struggles. And so, but it was in that moment that, it all came to light of like, I need to write this book, because that vulnerability is the one thing that allowed me to connect in a way that I was never connecting with people before.
Mhm. Mhm. So now you understand.
I do.
You
So,
understand exactly
yeah.
what I was saying.
Yes. So, like, that's what I was saying. Like, I can totally connect to what you're saying, because it was in those moments where I'm like, I'm struggling. But this is where I felt like I have a story to tell. I went through this,
Mhm.
but I went through this for a reason, because this is what is going to enable me to connect, because I finally get it. I finally get what struggle is. I finally get what shame is. And when you
Mhm.
go through that is when you're like, oh, yes, like, I don't feel like I have to be perfect. I can say what's the truth and not what I think people want to hear.
Absolutely. Well, I guess I'm not so glad you went through that
Right, right,
experience. But I'm glad that you learned the lesson.
right.
I have
Hmm.
a thought that it's you're doing yourself a disservice if you go through a crisis and you don't find the lesson, because
Yes.
otherwise you're just going through pain unnecessarily.
And you'll go through it
When
again.
you and you'll
Mhm.
go through it again when you learn the lesson, and then even better when you're able to articulate that lesson to someone else, that's when you are truly able to move past that lesson and find value in it and not just the pain.
Yeah. Yeah.
Otherwise, it's just pain.
It's just pain. Yeah. You have to let the student be the teacher. Yeah. So when you can then teach, this is what this pain felt like, and this is how I got through it, you might help somebody else. So I love that you
Absolutely.
wrote a book. So tell me about the process of writing a book and what was the inspiration behind it?
So the process was interesting. I have a course also called Spark the Stage, and I would love to sit here and tell you that like, oh, I had this book in me and it just had to come to the world. That was not the issue. I am also a
Right.
business person. So I'm like,
Uh-huh.
okay, look, I want to sell my course Spark the Stage. I am doing all of, other things to sell it and it's going well. But I'm like, what would really elevate me being able to speak from stages about this? And it's like a book. I need to write a book about this thing.
Yeah.
So I sat down and I was like, okay, this will be that was the first time I had really put all of my framework down in one place besides the course, in a written version. So I
Hmm.
took the course and I started off with putting that in the book, and then I added a bunch of stuff and I tweaked some things and added some additional frameworks. And I came out with the book, but I started in January 2020. What are we in 2025? So I started in January, sorry, 2024. And I was like, oh, I'm just gonna write a book. I'm gonna publish it this year, which was like all year to do this thing.
Uh-huh.
That's
Right.
not that's not how this works. I hooked up with a publication consultant, Prestinley, Prestinley.
Uh-huh.
The best. If you need someone and you're wanting to self-publish and you want to not figure any of it out,
Hmm.
go to Prestinley. They have very great pricing because the pricing on publication consultants goes all the way up. The highest quote that I got was $45,000. And I'm like,
Jeez.
what are
Wow.
you smoking?
Hmm.
So they are much better than that. And they are, I mean, it's like white glove service. So I highly recommend that. But the first thing they told me before I even signed on with them was, so you can't publish a book in Q4. It won't do well. I'm
Oh,
like, all right. So I was like,
okay.
so when do I need to give you this book? Like done and edited. They're like, June. Because I wanted to then publish it in September. September 19th was my birthday. So I was going to get as close to Q4 as possible. So I published it on September 19th, and they said, you need to give this to us by June. It was April,
Ooh.
when we were having this conversation.
Oh,
And I hadn't really written much.
right.
So I got my poop in a group and I did it.
Mhm.
June 30th, I sent the
Wow.
final. And it's funny because the person who just won Best Rap Album of the Year at the Grammys um, gave herself 30 days to produce her album. And she
Wow.
gave herself a time limit. And clearly it worked out well for her.
Yeah,
Clearly.
for sure. Wow.
And it's amazing what happens when you give yourself. So
Yeah.
my book is not gonna, well, might win a Grammy when I record the audiobook. You never know.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
but it is really good. And I was surprised at myself. I was like, I should have done this a long time ago, given myself a better time frame than a year
Hmm.
to do
Hmm.
it. So I had a couple of months. I popped this sucker out and I then handed it over to Prestinley, who did the cover art and the formatting and the Amazon ads. And it hit bestseller before its actual release date.
Wow.
And then it's hit bestseller on Amazon a couple of times since then. So I'm really proud of the book, but not just because I actually got it out in the world when I said I was going to, which is a proud moment, but because of what people are saying because of it. Wow, I feel more confident. Wow, I feel like you're speaking directly to me. Wow, I feel
Oh.
like I now have a way forward. And that's what makes me so proud. And then people then are ending up now, which is my master plan, buying the
Hmm.
book and then joining the course. Because the problem with any book, not my book, because I give everything that I possibly can to you, but the problem with any book is you read it and you're like, am I doing it right? That's the
Right.
big question. I don't know. I mean, I read it. Am I understanding it the way the author intended to write it? And then did I come out with a product that's any good? So people then join the program, which is a 12-month program basically of me answering that question for you as many times as you'd like me to. Are you doing it right? And showing you and teaching you nuances based on your individual circumstance.
Very cool. I love that. I love that you looked at it from a business perspective and you're like, how can I 10x my speaking career? And you're like,
Mm-hmm.
and it's so true. Like a book is the selling, it's the selling point because you can say best-selling author Aleya Harris, and so
Exactly.
it gives you validation of like, this woman is what she's talking about. That's very
Yeah.
cool.
And it was, I mean, it was like a lot to write, but
Yeah.
it was um exciting. And when I was writing the book, it was, I would never do this again. It's horrible. How do people do this? And now that it's out and into the world, I'm like already taking notes for my second one.
Oh, really? Oh, wow. That's awesome.
Yeah. And I'm like, okay, I think I'm hooked because I enjoyed the internal experience that it provided me of getting super clear, making sure that the concepts were as standalone as humanly possible. Because
Hmm.
when you have a course, especially like my course is a course, it's an on-demand course, but it's also a program, right? So you can talk to me. And I thought that I did that for the course where I put everything in the course and you would only need to talk to me when you're needing to bounce ideas off of me. But in the back of your mind, when you're creating the content, you're like, oh, they're going to be able to talk to me,
Hmm.
right? Whether you realize you do it or not. But in a book, you're like, they're not going to be able to talk to me right away. Like they're reading this on a plane. They don't know me like that. How can I help them? And it really
Yeah.
forces you to be at the top of your game with the
Mm.
way that you explain your own concepts.
Interesting. I like that. So tell me about your speaking career. How did you how did you start marketing yourself? Like if somebody wanted to start a great speaking career, tell me some tips that you would give them.
The first thing that I would tell you is that it is not difficult to get on stage. That seems to be everyone's hang up. They think
Mhm.
that these stages are elusive. Only
Uh-huh.
special people gets to find out where they are. Mwahaha. That is
Hmm.
not the case. You
Mm.
can Google call for speakers, and you'll be amazed at how many places are looking for people to get on stage. You then submit to call for speakers. Are you going to get them all? No. Are you going
Hmm.
to get some of them? Yes. And then when you get on a stage, whether they are going to pay you or not, your goal is to be as good as humanly possible because speaking begets speaking.
Hmm.
Speaking is the best way to be speaking.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, the way to be good on stage is buy my book, Spark the Stage, available on Amazon.com. And what you need to do is get into yourself, figure out what stories you're telling and what the general theme is throughout the stories and how it relates to what you sell. You then develop a presentation around those stories that allows people to understand your story and to understand the reason why you're telling the story, which is to convey a central point. You then teach them something, you give them in-room experiences, and you constantly reiterate their main idea so that they are motivated to participate in their own transformation.
Mm.
You also use that stage. So don't just stand in one place, move left to right and move forward and backwards and move up and down. I'm not saying jump up and down, but you bend your knees,
Yeah, yeah.
like sometimes you need to get lower, sometimes you need to bend at the waist. My definition of a public speaker is a performance artist who
Oh.
delivers helpful information from the stage, whether you're virtual or in person. So embrace the performance artist piece because otherwise they could be at home without the pants on reading a
Hmm.
blog post.
Hmm. Yeah.
So how are you going to differentiate yourself from the audible version of a blog post?
Yeah.
That is what makes people book you more and more. You have tangible takeaways, which is what every person that is designing a conference or an event wants. They want people to be able to write things down and do them. and they want people to be entertained.
Mm-hmm.
You think about your speaking from the perspective of the event organizer. They are trying to sell tickets for this year and trying to sell tickets for next year. And if you are so good this year, people will say, this is the caliber of the event, I'm definitely coming back next year, whether you obviously are speaking there or not. But they are assuming that the next speaker, whether it's you or not, is going to be as good or better than you, which makes them buy tickets. That's what is in the event organizer's mind. Are you going to put more butts in seats?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Everything comes down to money.
Mm-hmm.
Everything. I don't care if you're a relationship coach. I don't care if you're a divorce coach or lawyer. It all comes down to money. And you have to figure out where the money is flowing and how you can help it flow better, either for yourself or someone else. And that is another way for you to be asked back to be a speaker. Some of the don'ts: don't get up there and just talk about yourself. People misunderstand storytelling to be that, where you're getting up and just telling your story. The audience is a narcissist with a short attention span. You are when you're in the audience as well. Is it about me? Can you make it about me 5 minutes from now? Is it about me 5 minutes ago? But you're not really talking about me, so I'm not really listening.
Mm-hmm.
You need to tell your story in a way that has a so what. So don't just get up there and just talk about yourself and be like, well, hope you figure your life out from here. No. Ain't gonna work. Another don't is don't apologize. If there's a tech issue, if you don't click the slides right, if you don't say the right thing, no one knows. No one knows.
Mm-hmm.
You are the person on stage hosting a group experience. So the group experience needed for you to maybe skip over that slide. Maybe people weren't going to be that interested. Stay in the flow and don't apologize when you're on stage. Own the room, because that way people will feel comfortable in owning themselves if you are owning yourself on the stage. And that's how you get people to get into that vulnerable, receptive place where they're willing to take in your information.
Oh, I love that. That's really, really good advice. Awesome.
I try, man. This is what I do,
This
Angela.
is what you
This is what
do.
I do.
I love it. So you have there's one topic that I saw in your bio and it says why most speakers fail. And what is that missing element?
There are several.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
Most speakers fail because they don't actually get started. And
Ooh,
I know that that sounds so cliche, but it is literally what I see within my course over
interesting.
and over and over again. And I'm not calling anybody out. So if anybody here is in my program and you're like, she's talking about me, I might be, but I'm not going to say your name. If you feel convicted, maybe you should figure out how to keep going with your talk. But I have people that pay me thousands of dollars and they never even start on their topic.
Wow.
And they have something to say. I've heard them tell me their stories. I've heard them tell me their passion. I know that they can help people. They are experts and they just don't get on the stage. What most of the time is happening is they're letting their ego and limiting beliefs run their life.
Yeah.
And it happens very insidiously to where you think that it's a real problem when it's just an excuse. But I don't have the time. I mean, clearly look at my life. I run a business. I'm a parent. I'm this, I'm that. I plan to, I don't know, take a rocket to the moon, whatever it is. You find the thing that you are going to tell yourself is more important than you getting on stage. What you're really saying is, I'm scared, or I have a lack of knowledge. I don't feel supported. I don't feel confident within myself to tell this story. I feel like my story might harm myself or others. I don't feel like I can get into this topic because it's going to hurt me to revisit. I don't feel like other people will want to listen to me. Those are the things that you're really saying when you say, I'm busy,
Wow.
right? When, oh, this got in the way. So the thing that keeps most people from getting on stage and being a professional speaker is their ego, their limiting beliefs, and the fact that they never get started.
Mm. Yeah, I can relate to all of those because I've definitely given myself excuse after excuse of like, well, I'm just busy right now. Well, maybe next year. Well, maybe when things slow
Hmm.
down. Well, maybe when things, take off on this side of the career journey, and maybe when this happens. And I've done all of those.
I've and you're not alone. Yeah, now I'm at the point now where I almost get surprised when I get a student that's like, "Hey, can you give me your opinion on my final presentation?" I'm like, "Oh my God, yeah, you
Yeah,
finished."
that's awesome.
And and it's not for lack of support. And in
Sure.
my program, I am on a call with them once a week.
Oh,
They
yeah.
can hit me on Slack at any point in time, get feedback via video, via voice, via text. It is not, because I want to make it clear, it's not a me thing.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's definitely not a me not being, I said, I'm on stages, baby.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It is all of that stuff. And it's amazing how even after you've taken the first step and you've been in the program, you would think that most people would take it to the fruition because they just spent some money. But it's actually at that point that you need to watch yourself the closest, because that's, if you take a hero's journey analogy, you've been called into action and
Mm.
now you're refusing the call,
Ooh.
which is a clearly articulated step of the
Yeah.
hero's journey. And then you say stuck there, refusing the call.
Oof.
So the reason why I like storytelling is not just that it's a sense-making device, not just that it allows people to understand the insides of you on the outside, but because hero's journey and other storytelling frameworks is they're actually how we live our lives. And
Mhm.
so when you think of the hero's journey, when you think of a storytelling framework, when you think of especially ones from Latin and African American and African cultures that take in the collective sense of the greater good more into account, you're able to see where you are stuck
Oh, yeah.
in your
Mm-hmm.
own journey. And you're able to see the lessons and where you are. And you're like, oh, well, if I am here in this extraordinary world right now, and I've actually see that I've gone through this trial and that trial on this journey towards self development, well, then let me go back and really collate these lessons and celebrate my successes for no longer being stuck in the refusing the call stage, no longer being stuck in the I don't have a mentor and I don't have the knowledge to do this. I did that. Wow, how amazing am I? Now let me use that knowledge to continue along this journey. And it's when people take storytelling to the internal, most personal level, and they use it to understand their life. That's when storytelling really gets unlocked, and when the best speakers get unlocked, and when the best money gets unlocked, because you can apply that as what I do in my consulting business to individuals and then also to corporations and their workplace culture, because people live stories, whether we are writing the story intentionally or not.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I love that you use the hero's journey, because that is so powerful. Because that's exactly what's happening is you could be the hero in somebody's story, but you're not telling your story. You're not connecting. You're not putting it out there. There was a gentleman that I had seen. I had gone to church one day, and when I realized that it wasn't my normal pastor speaking, I almost left. I almost left.
Mm.
Like, it was like, oh man, I didn't come here to see somebody else. Like, I wanted this. But I was sitting there, and it was, like I said, this book, 20 years in the making. I had gone through this really awful experience. I was really like, nothing that I have to say is going to help anyone if I was able to put myself into a shitty situation, right? And so
Mm-hmm,
I
mm-hmm.
really had discounted my own voice and my own judgment. And so I'm sitting there and he is speaking, and he said, your story, if you've ever thought like you want to write a book and you're thinking that your story doesn't matter, who are you hurting by not putting it out there? Who
Mm,
is suffering right now and desperately needs to hear the words that you have to say to them, and you could then transform their life? And by not putting it out there, you are hurting them and you. And it was one of those
absolutely.
moments where you're sitting in an audience and all of a sudden you're like, is he talking to me? Like, is
He
this for me?
was. That's the way spirit works.
Yes.
Talk through him to
Yes.
everybody.
And I was like, how did he know? And it felt so personal. Like it felt
Hmm.
like this was to me on this was all 100%, you know, all the thousands of other people that were there, it's good for them, but this was to me.
Yes, yes. And
That was
aren't
the
you so
moment.
glad you stayed?
Oh my gosh, so amazing. But yeah, that was really powerful, and that's what actually triggered me to start writing the book again. But yeah,
Oh, good.
that was
I'm
really,
so
really
glad you
powerful.
went
Yeah, I know, me too. It was one of those just crazy moments
and you
where
stayed, I
I
guess, is
stayed. I was like, yeah,
the.
fine, I'll sit here for 10 minutes, and because I was trying to kind of like think of my route out because it was a packed, I was
You're like,
like,
how am I
all
going to
right,
get
how am I
out
going to get
without
out of
putting my
here
butt in
without it really
everybody's
like
face? Excuse
obvious?
me,
Yeah.
excuse me.
So yeah, absolutely. But fascinating, fascinating how that works. But I love that you use the hero's journey. I think that that's such a powerful way to convey that message
Hmm.
how our words matter. So
Yeah, absolutely.
so tell me about some obstacles that you had to overcome in getting to that place of your speaking career, your book.
Uh, well, postpartum depression was the largest obstacle for sure.
Yeah.
I was already a speaker when that happened, but I became a speaker during COVID. So
Oh.
also the obstacle was who's gonna pay me?
Yeah.
And the decision that I made was to just serve anyways, and it was the best decision I ever made.
Mm,
Because then as soon as people had the money, I was the one that they went to, and I made $250,000 in 6 months because of
that's
speaking.
awesome. Mm,
So if people are like, will speaking really make me the money? Yes, it will if you do it correctly. Um, the other obstacles that I've had to overcome were, what is my topic? What exactly do I talk about? I probably change my topics more than is right. And I also at one point in time had way too many topics, which it signals to event organizers that you don't know yourself and they don't
mm,
understand what box to put you in, and they need to be able to put you in a box. And that was just part of the journey, to getting to the point where I am now, where all of my topics are either storytelling for making money, which is break out of the sea of sameness with the power of storytelling, storytelling for culture, which is the story driven leader, or storytelling for personal development, which is vanquish the villains of your journey. Right.
oh,
But
very
it's all
cool.
storytelling and how
Yeah.
we're applying it, and all related to a revenue stream that I have. So it took a little while for me to figure that out. If it don't make dollars, it don't make sense.
Hmm.
So if you are just like, but I want to talk about my, I don't know, man, kitty watercolor paintings. Okay,
Uh-huh.
I can get on board with whatever you want to talk about. Do you have a Shopify site for your kitty watercolor paintings? Are you offering classes for how to teach kitty watercolor paintings? Do you have a book on how to teach? Do you have a meditation that people can play in the background as they're painting their kitty watercolor paintings? What are you selling? I can get
Right.
behind anything. And we can find a stage for you, my friends. Some maybe a little bit more limited than others. Kitty
Right.
watercolor paintings is very niche.
Very.
But we can find a stage for you, but you have to tie it back to something that you're going to sell. And people say, oh, but I just, want to talk. Talking is hard. Flying around the country, talking to sometimes rooms of people that don't want you there.
Yeah.
It's hard. And so, in order to stick with it, you have to get the what's in it for me
Mm.
as the speaker. And mostly
Hmm.
it's money.
Mm.
Yes, there's lovely, wonderful, beautiful moments that keep me going. People emailing me, you changed my life. I would not have been here without you. Thank you so much. Afterwards, saying, can I give you a hug? And them crying after what I'm talking about. And I talk about marketing and storytelling, mind you,
Right. Wow.
right? But I am good at what I do, Angela.
Uh-huh.
So those moments are great, but I can't do them broke,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
neither can you. If I am broke, I'm more worried about myself than being of service to an audience. You have to figure out where the money is as you're figuring out your career. And that's my biggest thing for those bleeding hearts out there, for those super altruistic people.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I love you so much. You're going to be great speakers, but where's the money?
Yeah, yeah. That's awesome. Really, really cool that you're saying that, because so many people were like, I just want to get my message out there, my message, my message. But at the end of the day, you also have, rent to pay. So
Yeah. Yeah.
you have to,
Yeah.
you can't be stressed about, like you were saying, how are you going to keep the lights on? Your message is wonderful, but let's talk about how to keep the lights on too. So
Yes,
I love that
exactly.
you're saying it out loud, because so many people get stuck on the I just want to make a difference, but you have to also have that foundation of like, I can make a better difference if I can also support myself. So
Exactly. And there's
mhm.
lots. I named some ways, but that's not an exhaustive list of how you can get paid.
Sure,
And it
yeah.
doesn't need to come from the event organizer. They can pay you 0.99 and you can still make money. And we do talk about that in the course and in my program. We can talk all about it. Sponsorships, there's all kinds of ways. But you have to have your mind on your message and your money.
Yeah, yeah. That's beautiful. Awesome. So tell me, what advice would you give to your 18-year-old self?
Baby girl. Oh, it's gonna be okay. First of all, don't date that boy or the next one. So let's start there. They good for nothing. They just gonna hurt your heart.
Yes.
I would tell her to find a way to maintain friendships longer,
Yeah.
because I have some friends from when I was 18, and my best friend, he's been my best friend since we were 15. But I would say focus on relationships and give people grace.
Mm.
Not everybody is going to do exactly what you want them to do, you little control freak. So
Uh-huh.
recognize that they are humans first and love them through it. Realize that Christianity and God are wonderful and Jesus is still your homeboy, but be open to the fact that Jesus and God are not in people. Or they are, he is in people, but people don't always reflect him.
Right. Mm.
And so any hurt, because I've been hurt and heart hurt in the church and by God, and I would encourage myself to find a deeper relationship with spirituality earlier and not look for it in people, but look for it in myself
Oh, yeah.
first. Um, Other advice I would give to my 18-year-old self is take more advantage of like the college programming. Like I went to a
Yeah.
really good school. I went to USC, and like I feel like there's a lot of cool things I missed out on. I feel
Hmm.
like youth sometimes is wasted on the young. If I
Yeah.
went back to college right now, I would be doing all of the things. The last thing I would tell my 18-year-old self is to get a therapist now, to get those skills that you need to weather the storm. And I would tell my 18-year-old self that you, my love, have high functioning depression and anxiety. I didn't realize that until I went to postpartum depression, and I thought I was just in postpartum depression, which I was, and it was
Hmm.
horrible.
Yeah.
But my psychiatrist was like, "So tell me about life before." And he goes, "Oh no, baby. Yeah, no, this is the lifestyle for you. This is not a right now. This has been a
Wow.
lifestyle." And he pointed it out. I was like, "Oh shit. Oh, sorry."
Wow.
I was like, "Oh my God, you're right." And I wish that I had gotten that earlier. I think that I
Mm.
my life would be very different.
Well, you
So, I
could
mean,
have
I just
given
have
yourself
so many
grace.
lessons. I feel
Yeah.
like I'm give myself a lot of grace. I feel like
Yeah.
I'm in a wisdom pocket right now. I think you go through
Hmm.
life, you're like, I'm learning and it's hard. And now oh my gosh, I'm gaining and collating all the
Yeah.
wisdom. And then, you'll go on the rest of the journey. But I'm in a wisdom pocket right now. So I think I would have quite a bit to
Yeah.
tell my 18-year-old self.
Yeah. Well, and I think we need to do more of that. We need to be giving advice to people who we have in our lives because there's so much like my son is 18 now and like I
Mhm.
am like daily just like dumping information on him like don't do this, make sure you do that, make sure like all
Yeah,
the things I
yeah.
wish I knew and somebody told me at 18, but they probably did tell me and I just didn't listen. So there's
Yeah,
that. So
absolutely. I had friends out the wazoo telling me not to date that boy. I just wasn't listening because I was
Yeah.
18.
Right,
So there's also
exactly.
some of that too. Like you could have told me lots of things. And would I have listened? That's a different
Right.
story.
Right,
But I
exactly.
think though, like in this magical place, if me right now at 38 was standing in front of my 18-year-old self, I feel like I would listen more because that's like, oh, well, you actually are me and know what I've gone
Yeah.
through versus, oh man, you don't know
Yeah.
anything. You're
Right,
old.
right. This is true. This is true.
Yeah.
So as women, we give our power away all the time. You know, we give our power
Mhm.
away to people who are toxic in our lives. We give our power away to, give credit for our work to somebody else. Can you tell me about a time that you gave your power away and another time that you stepped into your power? And I
The
imagine you step
very
into your power all the time, every time you step on a stage. But is
I
there
step in and out. It's a little bit like doing double dutch.
uh
Um, the very first sentence of my book is when I started my entrepreneurial journey, I was in an abusive relationship. And the
Mhm.
abusive relationship that I was in was with my mentor and coach at the time, who was a narcissistic energy vampire. And I gave all of my power away to her. I allowed her to develop a business that I didn't even know how to run. She would constantly tell me my ideas were not good enough, or they were almost good enough, but here's a better one.
Ooh,
It
yeah.
was very patronizing, very minimizing. And it wasn't until one day I was like, I don't like this, or I would have kind of a little bit of anxiety even going to go see her or meet her. I didn't want to be there. My whole body was saying no, that I was like, I need to make a change. And so I actually had she's the only friend breakup I've ever had.
Yeah.
And then like a good narcissist, she didn't want to be confronted with herself because I asked to talk to her. She said no. So I wrote her a letter. And then she told me all about how horrible I was. And I said, that's fine. I'm just done. And
Hmm.
so that was a very acute example of stepping in and out of my power and then back in and then back out and then finally into my power. And but it without her, there was a healing journey, right? Because she had become so inextricably linked with my own sense of identity as an entrepreneur because of the timing with which I was mentored by her, that I had to then discover myself. I had to then figure out whose voice was in my head because it wasn't hers
Ooh.
anymore. And I didn't hear mine in there. So who's Bueller? Who's in
Hmm.
here? Who's can
Hmm.
guide me now that I've rejected this person who I thought was going to guide me to success? And she probably would have. That's the thing. I probably would, if I had stayed under her tutelage and friendship, we'll call it friendship, would have been successful financially, but would have felt like a husk of a person on the inside. And I decided that my personage was more important. My humanity, my energetic sovereignty was more important than staying there. And then I was able to be successful without her.
Well, good for you. Yeah. And those toxic people teach you how strong you really are. So, it's
Absolutely.
crazy because they break you down, but then once you discover that you have the power to come back from that, you're unstoppable at that point. There's nothing that can hold you
Absolutely.
back. So, yeah,
Absolutely.
as much as I hate to say that those people do you a favor, them leaving your life does you a favor. And once you realize
Yes,
that you can come back from that. Hmm.
absolutely. I agree. I
Very
agree.
interesting. So, I've really enjoyed this. This has been so fun, and I've really enjoyed talking to you, Leah. But one more question. What do you wish more people knew?
I wish more people knew that they were divine,
Mm,
that you are having a human experience, but you truly are a divine being who is connected to every other divine being. So give yourself and your humanity grace. Look at yourself and the things that you're doing that are fallible as the way that you would look at a child who is learning. My
mm,
2-year-old trips and falls or, eats and food gets on the floor. Oh, you're horrible.
Right,
Oh, how
right.
dare you? Oh, you're an idiot. No, I don't do that. I'm like, oh, food's on the floor. She's learning.
Mm-hmm.
You and your humanity are a lot younger than you give yourself credit for. I
Mm-hmm.
don't care how old you are in human age. You could be 100 years old, but you as a human is so much younger than you as a divine being, the divine being that lives eternally within yourself. So look at yourself with so much grace, the grace that you would of a child, the child that is just trying to figure it out with blinders on, so without the ability to fully access that divinity at all points in time. And that is unfortunately part of the human experience.
Yeah.
So grace and divinity is what I wish people would know more about themselves.
Oh, that's beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Aleya. You have just been so much fun to talk to. So,
Yes,
where can
thank you for
people,
having me.
absolutely, where can people find you?
You can find me at aleyaharris.com, ALEYAHARRIS.com. And there you can buy my book, you can listen to my podcast, you can sign up for Spark the Stage to become a speaker. That's at aleyaharris.com/spark, where you can schedule a call with me to sign up and we can talk all about your goals and make sure that this is a good fit for you. So
Very cool.
aleyaharris.com, that's where you can find me.
Awesome. I appreciate it. Well, thank you again for your time. It's been a great conversation. And you can also find Aleya on prettypowerfulpodcast.com. We'll make sure all of her links are there. So please check us out next time. And I hope everyone has the most amazing day ever. Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining our guests on the Pretty Powerful Podcast. And we hope you've gained new insight and learned from exceptional women. Remember to subscribe or check out this and all episodes on prettypowerfulpodcast.com. Visit us next time, and until then, step into your own power.